Like,
I don't know why he would. We always taught him to, if you go with a group, you stay with a group. Yes, sir. So he knew to stay with his group. So why would he split from his group? I don't
There are
know.
90 minutes in this case that no single account has ever fully explained. Not what filled them, not what was said. Just a young man on a beach at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and by 4:30, a boat pulling away from that same beach without him. For the first time since their son's body was recovered, both of Nolan Wells's parents have now spoken. Christine and Elmore Wansley, sitting beside their attorney, Ben Crump, have laid out, in their own words, why they do not accept the explanation they were first given. Not the timeline. Not the reason offered for why their son was left behind. Not the state that phone was in when it finally reached them. Elmore didn't open with grief. He opened with a rule he says he repeated to his son for 18 years. If you go out with a group of 5, you come back with all 5. That rule is the spine of this entire case. So let's start where the day itself started and walk through it in order. Horn Island sits 8 miles off the Mississippi coast, part of the Gulf Islands National Seashore, and it's undeveloped on purpose. No staff station, no running water, no shelter, no facilities, no way to reach help once you're far enough from the mainland. The only way in or out is a private boat. Once that crossing is made, whatever happens next happens without backup nearby. For the group that set out that 4th of July morning, none of that felt like a risk. It felt familiar. This wasn't a new destination or a new group of friends. They had made this same trip before, the same stretch of coastline, the same understanding of how a day like this typically went. Cross the water, spend the holiday on the sand, come back together once the sun started going down. Nolan Wells was 18, a football player at Southwest Mississippi Community College, with a Division I tryout reportedly scheduled for the Monday after that weekend. Those close to him have described this trip as one last stretch of freedom before that structure returned. Not a young man running wild before consequences catch up to him. Someone already disciplined enough to be preparing for a college season, taking one holiday to just be young. The group spread out along the island's northern shore, near its western tip, where the beach widens and the water stays calm enough to draw a crowd on a holiday. At 3 o'clock that afternoon, Nolan was seen there. Blue swim trunks, no shirt, sunglasses. Nobody watching him on that beach at that moment could have known they were looking at the last confirmed sighting of his life. By 4:30, the boat that carried the group out was preparing to return. According to an account shared publicly by the mother of one of the boys on that trip, a local judge who said she wanted to address rumors directly, the boat had developed a mechanical issue with its bilge pump. Nothing dramatic, the kind of small malfunction that simply ends a beach day earlier than planned. The group began packing up for the crossing back. And at 4:30, by every account given since, Nolan was not among them. Let me stop right there, because that's the gap this entire case sits inside. 90 minutes between the last confirmed sighting of Nolan Wells at 3 o'clock and the moment his friends left that island without him at 4:30. 90 minutes that, to this day, no single account has fully reconstructed. Not what filled them, not what was said. Not why the outcome of those 90 minutes was a boy left behind on an undeveloped island with no shelter and no easy way home. For hours, nobody outside that friend group realized anything was wrong. Christine wasn't tracking the clock. She had no reason to. An evening running long wasn't unusual for her son, not on a holiday spent with people she trusted. The sun set. The evening continued. Nothing about the quiet felt any different from any other summer night. Then, close to 11 o'clock, two things happened almost simultaneously, miles apart, and neither one, taken alone, sounded urgent yet. One of the boys who'd been on that boat, later identified as Warren, the judge's son, placed a call to the United States Coast Guard, reporting that Nolan hadn't returned with the group. The Coast Guard logged the report and, by their own assessment that night, determined it did not require an immediate response. Sit with that for a second. A call was made to an agency built specifically to respond to people in danger on the water, and that agency decided the situation didn't yet rise to the level of an emergency. At 11:07 that same night, in that same window, a separate call reached Christine. Not from Nolan, from one of his friends. She's described that moment as one where the message mattered less than who was calling. Nolan's friends didn't typically call her directly. The instant she saw the name on her screen, something told her before a word was said that this wasn't an ordinary night. From there, things moved fast, but in a strange, disjointed way. The family turned to notifying authorities, And this is where the night stopped moving forward and started moving sideways. The Sheriff's Department, the City of Ocean Springs, the Department of Marine Resources, who took her information and redirected her back to Ocean Springs Police. Eventually, and only eventually, Jackson County stepped in and took the case over entirely. That is not a small detail. That is precious time, in the earliest and most reversible hours of a missing persons case, spent identifying who has jurisdiction instead of anyone actively searching. Now, let me talk about the phone, because the sequence of how it was found carries as much weight as what was ultimately on it. It wasn't investigators who located it first. It was Christine. Using Life 360, a location-sharing app already installed on Nolan's device, she tracked the signal through the night herself until it led her to a specific address, the home of one of the boys from the trip, the same young man who owned the boat. She went there and retrieved the phone before law enforcement did. Picture that for a moment. Not a detective, not a deputy, a mother, hours into the worst night of her life, doing the tracking herself because waiting for someone else to do it felt unbearable. Once the family had the phone, they went through it, hoping to find anything that might explain the missing hours. What they found was less than what should have existed. Nolan documented much of his daily life on Snapchat, sending photos and short clips constantly, the ordinary habit of someone his age. When Christine opened the account that night, there was nothing there. No saved images from the trip. No saved video. Nothing from that day at all. Here's why the timing matters. Content on that platform is built to disappear on its own, but only after 24 hours, and only if it was never saved. Christine has said she and her sister searched the phone before that window had closed. Whatever should still have been recoverable simply wasn't there. That's not rumor. That's a specific, time-stamped gap between what should have existed on that device based on how the platform works, and what the family says they actually found once they had it in hand. Let me be very clear about why that detail carries the weight it does. If the platform itself hadn't had time to auto-delete anything yet, then whatever wasn't there had to have been removed by a person, manually, inside a window with no chain of custody and no documentation, before it ever reached investigators. Now, there are two separate threads here that have been blended into one across social media, and they are not the same thing. The first, Nolan's closest friend has confirmed directly that some kind of verbal disagreement did take place on the island that day. That's been corroborated by someone who personally knew him. The second, a video that circulated widely online, which many claimed captured that exact disagreement. But the person who actually filmed it has stated publicly that the footage shows no confrontation at all, that it was recorded for an unrelated reason, and only became attached to this case afterward by online viewers who assumed more than the footage showed. Earlier reporting on this case, including characterizations attributed to the family's attorney, treated that video's audio as capturing Nolan protesting over his phone directly. The person who actually filmed it disputes that. So the clearest way to state it is this. A disagreement of some kind is confirmed by someone who knew Nolan personally. The video that spread online is not confirmed to be evidence of it. Both facts are true at the same time, and conflating them, the way much of social media did in the days after his death, is exactly the kind of shortcut that has clouded this case from the start. There's also the matter of Nolan's final known conversation, and here the accounts don't just diverge, they directly contradict each other. A young woman who'd been speaking with him on the island that afternoon told investigators that Nolan said he intended to head back to the boat, back to his friends, the way the day was supposed to end. That's her account, specific and direct. The friends who were on that boat gave the opposite account entirely, that Nolan said he wanted to stay behind and keep talking with her. Two people, two versions of the same short window of time. Both cannot be accurate. Crump's response to that has been blunt. One account is truthful, and the other is not. Step back and look at what's actually accumulated. A Coast Guard call logged as non-urgent. A 90-minute gap nobody has reconstructed. Two agencies bouncing the family between them before a third took the case. A phone tracked and retrieved by a mother instead of law enforcement. Content missing from that phone inside a window that shouldn't have closed yet. A verbal disagreement confirmed by a friend, tangled up with a video that its own filmer says shows nothing of the kind. And two directly conflicting accounts of the last words Nolan Wells is known to have spoken. Every one of those, on its own, has an explanation that costs nothing to believe. Together, they are far harder to believe in isolation, because believing each one alone means ignoring the one that came before it. That second independent look didn't happen without outside support. Former NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick, through his organization Know Your Rights Camp, helped fund the independent autopsy conducted outside Mississippi in Washington, D.C., by an examiner with no ties to local law enforcement. Filmmaker Tyler Perry separately covered the cost of Nolan's funeral. Two public figures with no prior connection to this family, attaching their names to a case that, by any reasonable measure, should have been far more straightforward from the start. Now, let me be fair about where the official investigation actually stands, because it would be inaccurate to frame this as officials disengaging entirely. The Jackson County Sheriff's Office has classified this as a death investigation, not a homicide investigation, and has stated more than once that it has not found evidence of a crime. That remains the department's official position as of now. The state autopsy has been completed, but the full report hasn't been made public, and investigators are still waiting on toxicology before an official cause of death can be confirmed. Until that report is public, there is no confirmed answer. Not drowning. Not anything else. At the same time, the sheriff's office has said publicly that it is reviewing the video that circulated online and has formally requested Nolan's phone for forensic extraction, an effort aimed at recovering the very data the family says is missing. That detail complicates any narrative suggesting this investigation has simply stalled. By the department's own public statements, the work is still active. Strip away everything else in this case, and it comes down to two concrete questions that remain unanswered by anyone in a position to answer them. The first, why do the two accounts of Nolan's final words directly conflict? One person says he stated clearly that he intended to return to the boat. A separate group says he told them the opposite. Both statements were made by real, named individuals describing the same short window of time. They cannot both be true, and months into this case, with a legal team involved and an active investigation underway, no official account has said which version holds. The second, why did content appear to go missing from Nolan's phone before it ever reached investigators? Christine located the phone herself before law enforcement did. She retrieved it. Only afterward did investigators formally request it for examination. By the time the family opened it, content that should still have existed, based on how the platform works, simply wasn't there. Who had possession of that device during the hours between when Nolan was last seen and when his mother located it? What happened during that window? Neither question has a public answer yet. Elmore has never asked anyone to accept a theory. He's been careful, in every interview since his son's passing, not to claim certainty about what happened on that island hour by hour. What he's said, consistently, is simpler than a theory and far harder to dismiss. He raised a young man who came home with his group every single time, without exception, for 18 years. And on the 4th of July, for reasons that remain unexplained to him, that stopped being true. Nolan Wells was 18 years old, a football player, a young man his father calls a silent leader, the kind other people followed without needing to be told. A son whose parents say would never have chosen, on his own, to stay behind, alone, without a word about when he was coming home. This case is not closed. When the toxicology results come back, when the phone's forensic extraction is complete, when either of those two central questions gets an actual answer, we will be here to cover it. If this is the kind of reporting you want, sourced, verified, nothing added for shock value, subscribe. Nolan Wells deserved every year that was taken from him. That full accounting is still being written. We will be here when it is.